I'd like to welcome everyone to General Government 2 meeting for February 12th, and we'll go ahead and start with our roll call, please.
Councilmember Dennehy, absent. Councilmember Gonzalez, absent. Councilmember Jaquez, absent. Councilmember Meisner, absent. Councilmember Reed, absent. Councilmember B. Smith,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hamrick,
Here.
Mayor Smith.
Here. And we're hoping that a couple more council members trickle in. They do have real jobs that they work at, and sometimes they show up a little bit later. 5 o'clock's a little tough for them. But we are glad to have representatives from the Parks Department and from our trails. We have Rex Brady, Jesse, and Steve. And we're looking forward to hearing from you, particularly about the horse trails and trestles.
Okay, I have a little video that I put together, kind of just showing what has happened over the parks, in the parks, especially Centennial, over the last year or two. I'd like to show that, if that pleases the council. Might need to turn the light off here too. I had music on my video, but don't have any speakers, so it's going to be a silent movie. It's just kind of the evolution of the park. They're taking a break. You'll notice the parking lot is not there yet. For the pavilion.
So Rex, when we're looking at this and, you know, every image is a new image, what kind of time has passed between images? Do you have an idea?
Basically, it's over a year. And I want to, when we get everything finished, we have a few items that aren't complete yet, but I want to do from start to finish and do a flyover like that. A lot of these is drone footage, and some of it is taken from our High Ranger. We're getting the sod installed there in the playground area. And the pavilion is starting to go up in this picture. Sod is starting to be installed. And this final picture is our DOC appreciation concert we had. This is the new shelters that we've been building at the park. 3 of them going up. They're complete now.
And those shelters we purchased, is that correct?
No, we built these,
Those are home-built.
right. the Parks
They look very
Department.
nice.
Thank you.
Didn't we get a bid on what those might cost to buy outside or something like that? Was
Yeah,
there-
we did at one point.
They're pretty pricey, if I remember right.
Yes, very much. We managed to build 3 shelters for right around $38,000, so. And this is the bridge lighting. It's not very visible, but this project turned out wonderfully. I think there's so much that you can do with this bridge. I mean, this is just an example of what you can do with it. But you can come up with any combination of colors and patterns, and it's really neat. This doesn't do it justice, this picture, but right now we've got it on, since this is Valentine's Day week, we've got it on a Valentine's program, so.
Did it come with several pre-programmed options that you could, canned program, so to speak?
Yeah, it did, but you can customize any program that you want. You can, the technician, he programmed in, I don't know, 26 or 7 programs that you can go up throughout the year. But you can take any of those programs, customize them,
Sure.
do anything that you want with them. So it's really a neat application, and you know, it'll be great for Whitewater. We can do different things for Whitewater Festival and different times of the year, Christmas and Thanksgiving and, you know, St. Patrick's Day. We can do different colors and lighting schemes, and
Great.
so it's really neat.
On Valentine's Day, can you do a flashing light show or
Oh,
on
yeah.
those special days?
Yep,
I
yep.
think that'll be fun. And I think it'd be nice to on social media, let the public know that that's happening so they can look out for it too
Okay.
and start
we-
getting
we'll
used
put-
to that.
We'll put a calendar together that
Oh,
we
that's a
can
good
get out on
idea.
social media that.
Great.
And we're doing it, instead of just on Valentine's Day, we're gonna do it the entire week
Oh, that's
of
better.
that holiday, St.
Mhm.
Patrick's Day and so on. So people have a chance to see it. If it's just there for one day, a lot of people miss it.
It's kind of like our version of the Empire State Building, but
Yeah.
Canyon City style.
Yep. And I could back up a little bit, but if you'll notice, all the lights they're at the top of the bridge. So hopefully vandalism will be eliminated from that. And we did have a bid that was around $85,000 to begin with, which included twice as many lights as we have installed now. We reduced that to 57,000, I believe it was, and I think we really got our money's worth. It's a great setup and very, very programmable, and like I say, you can just do anything with it.
But we did leave enough options in there to expand it in the future if we did want to add more
Right.
lights.
Oh,
Right,
great.
but-
So there is extra capacity there.
I think we need to get some good photography there for this week, for Valentine's week. And did you see on social media, Nick Landry had a gorgeous picture of the river and the lights on the bridge. And
Mhm.
it might be nice to
Yeah.
get his permission to use that.
Yeah,
maybe for-
it's really neat. With that last snow, just the snow, you know, it just made everything pop. But when we first got it installed, I wasn't really happy with it. It was bright on the top, and as it came down the superstructure, it would fade away. And it was just because of the angles of the lights, so the electricians went in there and changed the angles, and now we're getting light clear into the river. So it's spectacular. You gotta get over there and take a look at it when you get a chance. But this is Point Alta Vista. We're moving up to the gorge. And this is just a video that I took, had the camera walking out in front of me,
And this is the terminal of the.
Right.
Mhm. Okay.
past the actual steel terminal and walking
Yeah.
around the loop here.
And is the trail complete yet from city property to Point Alta Vista?
Not yet, no.
Not yet, okay.
That's, I think, part of what we'll be discussing tonight, I think. You know what time of year that was taken?
This was this spring,
In the spring? Mhm.
last spring, I should say.
Yeah.
I walked all the way around. But it's spectacular. this is the third trestle we did. This one's 862 feet long. That's the end of it, approaching the next trestle out to Point Alta Vista. I'm going to pause this here. The trestle on your right is the remaining trestle that we have at the gorge. It's the last one that there is. We need to really talk about if we want to actually finish that trestle like we did the rest of them or leave it. It's really not part of the trail system. It could be, but we had planned to build trail around that. And it was my thought, and of course it's up to council, to leave that for historical value. You know, that's the last trestle remaining that the old train used to go on. So that's the only picture of that trestle, so I want to pause that and have a look at it.
What if we incorporated it into the trail system, would it just be like a parallel?
Right, it's parallel to the one that the
So
picture was
it's
on.
not really, wouldn't really provide anything except two places to walk on?
Correct.
Yeah,
Where,
okay.
as you come off the end of Point Alta Vista, a trail system will pick up from there and go around that trestle.
Okay.
So it would remain and not affect the trail system at all.
Would there be some sort of block so folks won't want to adventure onto
Yes,
it, or?
both ends will be permanently blocked off, so nobody can get on it. And this is, continue here, this is just some of Steve's handiwork he's done in the Royal Gorge, some of his trails. And I will tell council that we really, really lucked out when we got Steve Thomas to be our trail builder. There he is at work.
Yeah, we know that very well. We're really happy you're still around, Steve, and hope you will stay for a while.
And this is moving on to the new campsites at our camp area, East Ridge Campground in the gorge, and these are some of the new campsites that we've constructed and will be ready to hopefully open everything up. You know, we talked about this becoming a pay site. We'll be ready to open that on Memorial Day.
Is that the square area there, that's intended to be the pad for tents?
That is a tent pad, yes. And
What's
most
that- what's
most
that
all of
surfaced
them-
with?
I'm sorry?
What's that surfaced with?
16 by 16.
But is it rock, or what's in the center of it?
That is crusher fines covered with some wood chips.
Wood chips, thank you.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And you have your picnic tables. We'll move on there, but we're going to end up, we originally thought we'd have 21 sites, but we're going to end up with 23.
Mm.
They're beautiful.
It was a really pretty day. It was cold and frosty, and everything was frosted over when I took these pictures.
Although those wood chips, if they're like in my yard, they're gonna blow away really quickly.
They
Just
do.
saying.
But you notice the wood chips in all of these shots, that's where we've reseeded with native seed and then covered it with wood chips.
Oh, nice.
And that's just a view from one of the trails. Pause that there, and this is the trail system that exists in the gorge. You have copies of that on your desk. I guess that would be one of our major topics to discuss today is, you know, with the use of horses in the Royal Gorge Park and that trail system. I was asked to come up with a alternate, as you know, the trails were designed basically as hiking and biking trails. They weren't designed for horseback. I've been Ryan tasked me with coming up with an option for horses. And this next slide is what we came up with. I don't know if I can point, yeah, but right here is the campground area. And this is the road going up to the towers, the communication towers on Fremont Peak. And they're hard to see, but they're right in this area. But there's an old road, right here is the locked gate. that you go through to access the towers. There's an old road that takes off through here. And it actually goes all the way out to the end of city property out here. But from this point here from the road, we thought we could hook it back up to the communication towers, and then they could ride the communication tower road back down to the campground. There would be parking down here for horse trailers, and we could probably just, they could either ride up the road, we might have to do a little trail here to get around the lock gate onto the road, and then that could be an option for a horseback trail that wouldn't, that's basically pretty much built. It's an old road, it's grown over. I had some pictures, I didn't get them on here unfortunately, but I went up and walked a lot of that old road, and it's grown up enough and overgrown that it doesn't look like a road. It wouldn't take much to maybe get a dozer, a small dozer, and go down through that. The only tricky part where new construction would have to take place is somewhere about right in here back to the communication towers. So that could be, this would be about a 3.5 mile loop in its entirety.
So that'd be
Yes.
about an hour ride on horseback.
Probably so.
Would that be an equine trail only, or would it be open to pedestrians as well?
I don't know why it couldn't be open to pedestrians as well. Bicycles, probably not. There's some steep up and downs on that road that I think bicycles would have trouble with, but it's a great hike. It's a great hiking trail.
Okay.
It's a vehicle road, that entire trail's been used as a vehicle road.
It was an old Jeep road, and it comes out, you can see the quarry on the right-hand side. That road actually comes out at that quarry,
Oh.
which is not on city property. The right-hand edge of that doesn't represent city property. It's back to the left a little bit.
Okay. And you had mentioned too that part of this trail is necessary for you to maintain our fencing as well, so it's kind of a dual purpose, or
Not this one.
not this one? Okay.
The trail that I wanted to build is to maintain fencing is gonna be impossible. The country is just too rough and steep. When you get up there and start looking around out there, there's some areas that, yes, we can get close to the fence, but there's others that we're gonna have to, probably gonna have to hike it. And
We went through a
maintain that
couple
fence.
iterations here where Rex and Steve were looking at the topography, and, we had some ideas initially, and the previous administrator had some ideas on what that route could be. But after looking at the topography and actually having people out there building the fence, it just wasn't conducive to what we thought it was gonna be.
Okay, no, that's fine. I think for me, the priority was making sure that there's something for most of our user groups in this area, and I think for me, it's a good compromise to have a trail dedicated for the equine use. If we move forward with this plan, will there be signage so it's clear on which trails are allowed or not allowed for the
Absolutely,
different users?
yeah. We'll have to do that for sure. As far as, I guess, probably what we need to talk about, as far as my priorities, it's finishing the trail to the trestle, which, Steve, I think you have kind of an estimate on how long that would take.
Yes, I'm already out there at the bottom of the bedrock, just below the trestle, so we are all the way out there, but there is a loop that will happen, as Rex mentioned, that kind of goes out and around the trestles themselves. And most of that's bedrock out there anyway, so it's, I'd say another 2 or 3 weeks, and we can
Oh,
have that
that's
loop
great.
ready for the grand opening.
So grand opening, are we doing some sort of grand opening when that trail gets complete?
Yeah, we're hoping to. As far as dates, we don't have anything scheduled tentatively. Possibly, we could have it during the ZIA event. So there'll be a lot of people up there, and I believe the ZIA event is on May 16th, I believe. So maybe we could do a combined you know, with that event, they'll have a lot of people up there, and a really great chance to showcase those trestles and that trail that goes out there. And we are working still, we've got a couple of agreements made with Ty Cipher for the trail that would lead out to the trestles from his parking lot, which is just a mile out and a mile back. So we have an agreement with that. We'll get that to our attorneys so they can finalize that. And actually from County Road 3A, if I can back this up just a little bit. Where are we here? From here, this is that first little parking area that you pull off to the right as you're going to the gorgeous County Road 3A. That trail out there, one track mine made in the shade going all the way out to Point Alta Vista. Steve, what is that, round, or one way? Shortest, probably
I forget what the total is. It's about 2 miles, I'd say.
2 miles. So it'd be a, 4-mile round tripper from that point, where it's gonna be a 2-mile round tripper from Ty's property up here. And so that would be my first priority, is to get that complete. My second priority would be the Tunnel Drive Fremont Trail connection. And I don't, we can look at it, Steve and I took my four-wheeler and I didn't get too far on the old Jeep road before I ran into a great big wash that I couldn't get around or over or through or anything, so I took off on foot. And a lot of it, like I say, is just a matter of, I think, taking a dozer down through there and scraping that off a little bit and removing some rocks and debris that's fallen into the road over the years. And the main, as far as labor goes and building, making that connection back to the communication towers. That would take some time, but.
Is that the trail that we were working on an agreement with BLM for? And are we kind of waiting on that still?
Well, no, this is still on city property. The BLM is the connection to Tunnel Drive from
Right.
Fremont Peak, which goes through
Fremont
Tunnel.
Peak, so it's,
It starts on city property, goes through BLM, and ends up back down on Tunnel Drive.
So Rex, just so I, make sure that I'm tracking as well. So task 1 is complete the trestle trail. Task 2 is the Tunnel Drive connection, which is that BLM project. And then task 3 would be building that the horse trail.
Right, but probably what's gonna happen is when Steve gets the trails done out to the trestles, we've got a window, June and July, we have to stay out of there. That's when the closure is on Tunnel Drive, or Fremont Peak to Tunnel Drive. So those 2 months, June and July, we could probably be working on the horse trail while we're closed out of that section. And probably have that done pretty quick. And then the 1st of August, we can get back in and start again on the connection to Tunnel Drive from Fremont Peak.
So clarification again, though, I thought that we were still waiting on an agreement with BLM to build on their part of their property.
Right, the environmental assessment
Yeah.
is complete. It's been signed off on. We can start construction on March 7th.
And have we had do we need a signed agreement as far as having it closed June and July, and then during certain hours during hunting season?
Right, and we'll have that agreement. It's been agreed upon, but it's not in writing yet.
How soon will that be in writing? I'm a little reluctant in putting a lot of manpower in building something until we have that agreement.
Sure.
Yeah,
I know.
it's signed, so it's
Yeah.
just a formality at this point.
So, BLM was going to finalize all those documents. So, Rex, you follow up with the folks over at BLM and,
Right.
maybe ask for an ETA on when that's going to happen.
Okay, and I'll follow up as well with CPW. And
go ahead.
we've spent quite a bit of money over the past couple of years on fencing to keep the cows out. We have the entire, it's running along County Road 3A, but basically we have the entire north border of the park fenced. Plus, we're fenced down to about here, heading south from the northeast corner of our property. The cows came back in before Thanksgiving, and we haven't had one cow in the gorge. So I think we've solved the problem, knock on wood, without having to build any more fence.
Oh, that would be nice. There was a problem with some fencing being cut. Is that when the cows got in? Is when the fencing got cut? And
Yes.
Wait, what, was that a man-made?
Obviously, it
Problem?
was cut by people, and it was just right along the cattle guard on 3A. And the cows got in at that point, but since then, you know, we got them all out of there, fixed that fence, and we haven't had a cow in there. The wild card in this cow deal is Mr. Cypher's property. He's got several gates that if one gets left open, and I don't know much about cows, but they seem to learn their lesson because they were down kind of on the west end on Ty's property. All the gates were closed. They hung out there for a day or so, kind of on the road thinking, okay, how do I get in here? And they couldn't find a hole or a place to get in, so they just left. And so, haven't seen them yet, but hopefully we've got the cow issue solved and won't have to build any more fence. Because it's unbelievable, and I'll get some pictures actually where these guys, and this was Alpine Fencing that did all this work, where they actually went and built fence. It's amazing. I mean, steep up and down and rock, and they bored holes with jackhammers to get the posts into the ground, so they did an outstanding job, and hopefully we have the issue solved.
Can we talk now about that last trestle? I know the previous council had approved some money to fix that one. I think the previous mayor was had safety concerns about it. But then both you since then have come back, and FAR has approached me as well, saying that they would prefer to see it left with its historical value, and that money could be put to much better use somewhere else. And I'd like to hear more about that.
Yeah. You know, I was a little bit surprised when the previous councilor, you know, when we said we wanted to finish that trestle, because it was never on my radar because the actual trail went around it. So, you know, just my personal opinion is I think it should be left as is. And it's a reminder of what, you know, the past and the history of Canyon City and what that once was.
I think some of the probably that I know that I've not been out there, so I have not seen any of the trestles, but remembering the discussion, or trying to remember the discussion that we had, it seemed to me that we thought that the trail right now walks down into the gully that trestle crosses and then comes back out. And it was my understanding that if we finished that trestle, we would have a complete path then that didn't dip down and you'd have to climb back out of a gully. But evidently that's not the case. Is that
No.
right?
No, as soon as you come off the trestle at Point Old Vista around that corner, the trail starts from there. And it does go up and down and around, but it bypasses that fourth trestle that's not finished.
Okay.
Yeah, and that is true. I've had the privilege of being out there, and it is gorgeous, and I don't think that's a problem. Ashley Sack, I was at a FAR board meeting when this was brought up, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I remember the conversation was, we know some other things that would be way better to use that money for. Would you mind sharing some of those ideas with us?
I think certainly.
We would need you to come to the mic, though, sorry,
Please.
so for the television.
Hello, good evening. I think certainly the additional trail mileage that Steve was talking about, that loop, help for Steve, so an additional individual who could be out there helping him with the maintenance of the existing trail would also be probably a good use for that money as well. Were there others that we talked about, Steve?
I believe that was it.
Yeah, that's, I mean, really, there's so much more that could be built outside of that trestle, that I think that money could be used in that way. And I wholeheartedly agree that it's a beautiful trestle in and of itself, not being touched at all. It's the original wood. The rails are still there. When you approach it, I understand safety concerns. It's actually not easy. If it were barred off, it would be hard to like walk around that because of the way that the slope goes down immediately where the trestle starts. So I understand the safety concerns, but I do think that if you did a great job, you know, blocking it off, there's so many other alternatives. I don't know why you would want to walk it when you can go on the trestles right next to it. And it would be hard for anyone to walk around or climb around that. You'd really have to want to get into trouble to do that. So I think it'd be fine.
Okay, I think that was part of the conversation, is we have quite a population that really wants to get into trouble, so. Well, and really, that money can be spent in a gazillion different ways for the benefit of Canyon City as a whole, not necessarily
Absolutely.
trails, yeah.
Looking at this year's project list and this year's budget, it'd probably be our recommendation to just bank the money back into the reserve fund and, plan for projects for 2021.
Help it go towards something a little bit more significant.
Sure.
Right. I know we have some areas of Canyon City that it's kind of time to start spreading the love a little bit for that. Is there any comments from City Council on that?
Just so I understand the timeline, so we're looking at the horse trail for like June and July-ish?
Yes.
So,
We'll work on the Tunnel Drive Fremont Peak connection up until the closure.
Okay, and just so I can answer some questions to some people that have approached me, are we going to not allow horses on the bike trails until that's completed? Because I know there were some issues with the horses destroying some things, and obviously feces and things like that were causing issues for bike riders and hikers.
There is that concern as well as safety and liability concerns on that. But one thing I would like to mention as far as the horses, and I think Steve could reiterate a little bit, the Fremont Peak Tunnel Drive connection is going to be very steep in places. It's basically, it's going to be an incline type trail, a challenging trail. And so it's my thought that horses should not be allowed on that trail, period, up there. But as far as the horse trail, if this is a viable, good option, then that's how we'll approach that.
I think another part of that conversation too is that Red Canyon is a really good spot for horse trails.
Absolutely.
Horse and pedestrian trails, not necessarily so much for the biker trails.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if there's a representative from the Equine. Are you from here? So you have an opportunity to speak as well. But it kind of an introduction before you come up and speak is also that FAR has raised and contributed $60,000 to the trails at the Royal Gorge Park.
Yes.
And so they have significant money invested in that, and we've just been kind of matching here and there and using grants as well as we can to do that. And so an important part of building trails for the equine is also an ask that there's matching funds from that user group as well to make those things happen.
Right. FAR has just been phenomenal. Without FAR, a lot of this wouldn't have been possible.
I don't know if any of it would have really.
No,
Yeah.
they were the catalyst behind it. It was something that I wanted to do for a long, long time. And FAR stepped in, and they were the ones that really, really made this happen. So I appreciate FAR so much, what they've did and the money that they've contributed and continue to contribute in this money, or in this community.
Really, and it really is a testament that nonprofits and grassroots efforts are much more efficient in getting things done, and it's a lot more cost effective as well. And so as far as city goes, it just makes sense to get behind an organization that is making things happen and just give that a little extra oomph to really make it fantastic.
Right.
And I'm happy to have that conversation too with other user groups that want to have those same kind of success stories.
Right, and I think that's what, we're gonna need to do in the near future, is sit down with all the user groups and, the equestrians and FAR and everybody else, the hikers and all those organizations and just kind of hash out an agreement. To me, you know, building in the future, you mentioned Red Canyon Park. I think Red Canyon Park would be a spectacular multi-use trail. Plus it, you know, it's just north of Seep Springs, which horses are allowed there. And between city property and Seep Springs, it's all BLM, so those two areas could become connected and even, you know, clear out to the banks, so that could become a huge trail system out there in the
Okay.
future. And, you know, one of these days here, hopefully soon, we're gonna be built out in the gorge and ready to go somewhere else, so.
Well, yeah, I think we have talked a lot. An important part of this conversation too is we can't build so much that we can't afford to maintain it either.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so we need to be really careful where that line is
Mhm.
for us. Ryan, I see that you'd like to speak. Would you like to speak before we invite the equine?
I do. I
representative?
just want to, address a comment from Councilman Smith. The very back of the map packet, there is a one-page, that is an ordinance that was brought to City Council previously, the previous City Council, regarding, horse usage and, whether or not to prohibit it in certain areas. Previous council, we were acting under the direction of not bringing that forward to council until there was a solution or a place for horse riders to go. So, as of right now, we have not brought that ordinance forward, but, assuming that we're moving forward here and creating additional riding places and places for the equine user group to go, eventually we will bring that forward to council.
Yeah, this ordinance has been in the works for at least 2 years. We've actually had, there was one incident in particular in Centennial Park. I pulled in after lunch and there was horse trailers with horses, and there was folks actually setting up barrels in the ball diamond in the grass area to barrel race. And so I'm like, no, we can't be barrel racing on the ball diamond. So, right now there's no ordinance that prohibits horseback riding on any of our trails, any of our parks. So that needs to be addressed.
Councilman Hamrick?
Thanks. A couple of questions here. So, as I understand it, we have I was participated in some of the public meetings when the Trails Master Plan was developed.
Mm-hmm.
So this particular map of trails here, how many of those trails were existing 10 years ago, say, just as a...
I'm sorry?
How many of those trails were existing as of 10 years ago?
None of them,
None of them?
no.
Right, and so what has happened has that been in accordance with the Trails Master Plan?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Mhm.
And so all of those trails right now are usable by bikes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And just a technical comment on the proposed ordinance that we'll see at some point. Not ready to see it yet, but it says upon any horse or any other animal capable of being ridden. And so do we have other animals we're concerned about being ridden on trails?
Donkeys?
Yeah,
Well-
we have seen donkeys in Centennial Park.
Well, last year at the DOC appreciation party, there was 2 donkeys in the park that people would just walk
Okay.
up and down the river walk.
What about a Great Dane?
Well, if you can put a saddle on it.
That's my point. That's my point exactly. And so I think that language needs working. You might have the attorneys look at that. Either we need to be a little bit more specific about, species, genus type information or something like that. I mean, if we have a list of animals that we don't want to see there, we probably should list them out rather than something vague or an animal capable of being ridden could mean just about anything to anybody, depending on how you say capable.
Right.
Is capable of being ridden by a 2-year-old? Does that count? So there's some enforcement problems with that language.
And that's a draft ordinance, so we can certainly
Yeah.
work on that.
That's my comment to Ryan. Okay.
I'd like to invite you to go ahead and come up and address City Council. Please give your name and address too, so we have that for public record.
Hi, excuse me, Hillary Lehman. Sorry for the sunglasses. I had a concussion earlier, so
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
it's okay. I don't have, I was not aware of this meeting up until a couple days ago, and now that I'm aware of an ordinance, that's concerning that horse people haven't been consulted. That's a major concern for me. I'm wondering, Rex, who you consulted on the new trail that you're talking about, as far as horse people?
I spoke with Barbara Cook.
Uh-huh. And I remember she spoke with you about the Tunnel Drive Connector Trail as well, right?
Right.
And that she didn't think it was recommended for anyone but hikers, including that she said to us, at least our group, that she has 3 horses that she rides, 2 of which she would trust on that trail and 1 of which she would not.
Mhm.
So, and she felt that bikes wouldn't be safe on that trail either, as far as the grade. And then when I was looking at the environmental assessment, right, or is that right? I was looking at that, and it says maximum grade of 20%, right, which is not a steep grade for most trails that a lot of my riding buddies ride on. So I'm not sure that I feel like there's a lot of this is not super clear, at least for me, coming from a horseback riding perspective. Like, if I'm putting my horse on a trail where there's hikers and bikers, my horse has seen them already and knows what to expect. And I think FAR has done a really good job in the past year of making sure that their users know how to interact around horses. We were out at Oil Well Flats just 2 weeks ago now, I think, and we had a horse who'd never seen bikes before who spooked real bad, and the riders stopped, got off, waited for us to tell them what to do, for the horses to calm down. They were really considerate. So FAR's been doing a good job on shared trails. So I'm not exactly, I suppose I'm in a group that's a responsible user for the most part. And so I haven't been up in the Royal Gorge region since September. We did a full moon ride up there. And I don't remember, obviously we didn't come across any other users at that time because it was at night. But I'm not sure exactly what the problems are that you're talking about or the damage. Because I know that horses make footprints, but then they're usually kind of stomped out by bike trails. I've seen it. I've seen horse damage that gets covered up and flattened out by bikes. And I think they're called mountain bikes for a reason, right? They're supposed to be able to handle bumps
Right.
and stuff. So where's the intel coming from as far as damage and altercations and whatever else? Because I thought that last year we established that horses could be allowed in the park.
No, it was
Right.
not, it wasn't established that horses could be in the park. But it was established that we would find, as a compromise, we would create a trail where horses could use a trail in the park of Royal Gorge Park.
Okay.
And we did invite the user group to come and participate in that meeting and in meetings since then as well. And so we have tried our best to involve them, but Rex, can you further explain some of the damage, not just damage, but just the way the trails were, maybe Steve, you too, the way the trails were built?
Yes, well, again, when I was hired, it was.
Don't forget to use the microphone,
Yes,
please.
sorry. When I was hired, it was to build bike hiking trails, and that's what I designed everything for. I wasn't expecting equestrians at the time. It didn't even cross my mind, to be honest with you, because I saw very few in the area. And the damage, I will admit, it's minimal. It really is. But when it has happened, it's post-holing that's actually quite deep just because of the conditions at the given time. And those, if it's 4 inches deep, they will not be mitigated by bike traffic. It just doesn't work that way.
What about the tree line, or as far as cutting back for,
Well,
Right.
yes, and that was
Branches.
another part of
Yeah.
the design. Sorry. Another part of the design was keeping things a bit more intimate for hikers and bikers. If it is open to equestrians, then you have to have a much larger corridor to accommodate the horses. And then aesthetically, it's not quite as pleasing for hikers and bikers. So that definitely is part of it. And one thing I think we need to take into consideration, if we compare ourselves to, say, Salida, that is very organized, they've been involved in trails and volunteer groups for many, many years now, and it took them a long time to get there. Well, we're not there. We're a long way from that at this point in time. I don't know what the volunteer hours are that Salida puts in, but I dare say they're putting in probably 1,000 hours or more per season with all of their volunteers.
For trail maintenance?
For trail maintenance, yes. And so, you know, when we take Tunnel Drive Connector into consideration, a big part of it for me, I understand horses could go up and down that without any trouble. I've worked in horse country, I've worked with horses, or equestrians, I should say. But it's the maintenance, and we don't have the people, and we're not organized quite yet to take on the maintenance of having an additional heavy user on the trails we have. So I do think we need to take that into consideration. And the majority of the volunteers that we do see are hikers and bikers. And nothing against equestrians, it's a smaller user group, but they do have to understand that there will be trails in the area that would be closed to them, but then there's other areas that would be open to horses and not open to bikes, and never will be open to bikes. So I just personally, I feel that everyone has to understand that it's a give and take, that for all user groups beyond hikers, there's going to be trails that are open to some and not open to others.
And Steve, excuse me, for those of us that are not familiar, you referenced Salida and what they've got up there. What do they have up there?
You know, I'm not that familiar with it. That's why I know they're very well organized. Salida Mountain Trails is, maybe Ashley would have an idea of how many volunteers they have in any given year and how many hours they're putting in, but they're leaps and bounds ahead of us at this point.
So in what area are they leaps and bounds ahead of us? That's what I'm trying to get my hands around.
In volunteer trail maintenance.
Volunteer
And
trail
volunteer
maintenance.
hours,
Okay,
yes.
and that leads me to kind of my second question. As I understand it, I've worked around horses and I really like horses myself, although I don't own any. But it's my understanding that when the horses use the trails and there's been any snow or precipitation or anything like that, the issue is the trails get chopped up pretty good, and that creates more of a problem or a challenge for the mountain bikers to use that trail. So if you can, and whoever can answer this, Rex or Jesse or Steve, but if we had a trail that was just a bicycle trail, what kind of maintenance would you expect to have to do that on that trail on a year in and year out basis?
It's very little. The biggest issue with maintenance is due to the soil types. And, as everyone knows, we may go for 2 months with hardly a drop of rain, and then we see these rain events that are, 4 inches of rain in a couple of hours. And it just, unfortunately, creates a lot of wash erosion, or splash erosion.
So that's from the elements. It's not from the
Exactly.
use of the trail,
No.
but it's from the natural conditions that we have. Okay, so
Yes.
let me ask my question and throw another aspect to it. So if we have a trail that's a bike trail and a horse trail, what kind of maintenance would we have to do on that year in and year out? Not, not considering the elements or
Right.
things like that, but what has to, what would that maintenance look like?
Well, the one thing with horses is they have a tendency, because of their displacement, the action of just simply walking a horse on a trail, they tend to pop rocks from the surface of the trail that would never be popped out of place by a biker or a hiker. So that's what we find more than anything. And horses, the steeper the hillside, if it's a contouring trail across the hillside, they tend to walk on the outside edge of the trail, and that compromises the trail. So what happens is the outside breaks away, and then they take a few steps in, and that starts to break away. And that's purely, from what I've understood, it's a predator-prey instinct of horses, and maybe Hillary could elaborate on that. I've been told that elsewhere, the steeper the slope, the more likely a horse is to walk to the outside edge rather than on the tread itself. And
To be a
I've seen
little,
plenty of evidence of that through the years.
to be a little facetious, horses are just vain animals. They want to be seen, you know? So. Just kidding.
So I have maybe some questions for you too, Hillary. You talked about, why am I involved in this conversation? And I do want just to reiterate that we did invite the equine group to come and be involved in this conversation. It was really important to us that it was. But also at the same point, it's not our responsibility to motivate your user group to be to take part. And the point I made earlier was, I prefer to get behind a group that's doing something that comes to us and say, look, we've got money, we've got manpower, can we work together? And so the last time we were here having this conversation, it's been a while ago since we've had it, we were told that the equine group would have money and they would have manpower, and they'd be a part of the solutions too. And I haven't seen or heard anything from that group since then. And so when we want to build these more trails and from the group, my request would be, let's come with solutions, and part of that solution would be coming with fundraising and volunteer work to be a part of it. The trail we're building for the horses at the Royal Gorge Park is almost like a free gift to the equine group. But I want to get behind a group that's going to be involved and be a part of the solution and not just come after the fact and say, hey, what about us?
Was there a question in there, or?
So I guess my question is, do you want to be a part of that solution and being able to motivate your group or organize and mobilize to do fundraising to help build those trails and be a part of that financing and provide real manpower hours of volunteer work?
I mean, I can only speak for our group. When we were here last time, I think it was Tony O'Rourke that said there was supposed to be a meeting between all of these groups, and that never happened.
I'm
I mean,
pretty sure we had
I
meetings. I heard
understand
about 'em.
exactly where you're coming from. I'm a teacher, so I'm not gonna chase a kid down to do extra credit, and I'm not gonna chase him down for missing work. I understand that. We have about 50 members, so there's only so much we can do. But when I come here, not knowing that there was a meeting until a couple days ago, and find out that you're gonna gift us a 3-mile trail, which is an hour ride, like you said, I don't really see that as a gift if you're gonna kick us off the rest of the trails. I see that as kind of a, well, I don't, my words are not super clear in my head on the way out, so I guess what I see it as is this prejudice almost, that I want us to be able to help, but I can't be part of a solution if we're coming in late because we didn't know that all of a sudden they don't want us on these trails. And we're not responsible for every rider. If we had more ability to educate more people, we wouldn't have the damage. And those post holes that you're talking about, horse riders didn't know they were there until their horse put their foot through it. So it's not like we're going out there causing that necessarily. That soft dirt was there.
And I will say that we have, there's other user groups that also have irresponsible people. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, we've found, ruts from mountain bikers too when they shouldn't be out there. Hikers don't leave much of an imprint, of course, but we definitely have our issues with bikers as well.
Well, and we have spent tens of thousands of dollars to fence out the horse or the cows because of the damage that they were causing on the
Right.
trails too. And so there's been significant amount of money contributed towards these trails.
And you mentioned at the start of this meeting that other people that aren't here have full-time jobs, which is true for all of us. I know we have a fair amount of retired people in our group. There's only so much I can do as a teacher to come out here and say, yeah, we can help. I don't live in Canyon. I care about canyon trails, and I care about canyon trails being shared with everybody. So I do care about a solution and a positive one where we can all share the space. But just because we don't have as much money doesn't mean we can't help. And if, in particular, what I am aware of for the Fremont to Tunnel Drive connector, that process is, you guys have been working on that for almost a decade, right? I've lived here for almost 5 years and I knew nothing about it until the EA came out. So I don't know if there's a way, if stuff is being posted somewhere that we could find out more information, but I had no idea since the last time we met about the livestock in Royal Gorge. I didn't know anything else was going on. Like, if there's a place where I can find that out and where other horse people can, and where other horse people can be educated, where we can be involved, that'd be fantastic. Because I'm not I am today because I'm concussed, but for the most part, I'm not completely unaware of what's going on in the government. So I just think that there's a bit of an ice out situation happening, which is really unfair. And I, again, like you said, there's irresponsible people on both sides. I've been irresponsible on the trail. But for the most part, like, the people I know ride safely, and I don't want my horse out on an icy, muddy trail. That's a good way for them to get hurt. So I don't know who these people are causing damage in the mud, but they're really irresponsible. And if I knew them, I probably would have told them not to be out there already. So in summary, I'd like to be able to help. I think it's kind of a joke to offer us 3 miles in a trail. What's the network right now? How many miles of trails are in the Royal Gorge Park for hikers and bikers? 10 or 11, 12?
Yeah, there's a little more than that.
Yeah, so I just don't see that as a fair compromise. I know that FAR's name is at the top of that, and CPW, and I can't quite read the rest of it,
It's
but
the 1% Trails, that's fundraising of folks who donate to build those trails.
okay. Like, I see the percentage that FAR has put more money into this, but that doesn't mean that horses can't be out there too.
Well,
Like, so-
there's a real possibility that horses will not be allowed on any of those trails at all, no matter what. So you can either there's a possibility that you can have those a gift of a 3 miles or nothing at all at Royal Gorge Park. There's not an obligation.
No,
The
there
trails have
certainly
not
is
been
not.
built, the problem is the trails that are existing there now have not been built for the horses.
But so to the trail builder, what's the major difference in building a trail for a bike user versus an equestrian user?
Size, correct?
Yes, I mean, size is a big part of it.
Size
but
of the trail
also
itself?
The flow of the trail. I mean, if it's being built with bikes in mind, then obviously a horse can ride what a bike can ride, but what happens is with the loose rock, it's not as a pleasing of a enjoyable for bikers as it could be. It's just the way I design for bikes is, if I was designing for horses, it would be different. And I've built plenty of horse trails in the Dakotas, and it's a much wider trail typically. It doesn't meander quite as much. And, I just take other things into consideration.
It's upsetting that you feel the prejudice, because I think that the whole point of this was to make everybody happy. That's just the way I felt about it. I know that there were some issues that the bikers were having, so we came up with this plan to make the equestrians, to allow them to participate in something. I don't know
think-
how to make everybody happy.
No, there's not a way to make everybody happy, but I mean, I guess devil's advocate, how are you gonna keep those bad horse users off those trails that you don't want them on? Like, if they're going out there destroying the trail, whether you want them to or not, how are you gonna keep them off?
Well, I guess one of my themes is always to provide a healthy and a wholesome and a positive alternative. And that's what this trail is. It's an alternative, a positive alternative that we hope that the horses would prefer. Because when I've talked to those who ride horses, they do not like to be on trails where mountain bikers are. They hate it themselves. So if they could have a trail that's designated to them, they're all over it. So that's what I want. I don't want a trail with bikes. I want a trail that's for horses. And so we have put a lot of thought about it. We have invited you all to be involved, and we will continue to invite you to come to us and be a part of the solution.
Thanks.
Thank you. Ashley, did you want to have some more comments? And
We also have Tim McCain here representing the motorized users.
Thank you. Hillary, thank you for coming tonight. I know you work, and sounds like a concussion is not the best way to start off a day where you come to City Council and speak. I also just want to remind folks that the South Canyon Trail System is also open to equestrians. And I want to thank you also for recognizing that we have been trying harder to be more accommodating of multi-uses by posting on our Facebook page and our adventure guide. We're going to do an even better job this year of making sure that our user group, which is hikers, bikers, and runners, I don't want to leave those people out, are educated to the fact that equestrians can be and probably will be found on these trails. So thank you for mentioning that. But FAR has also been the catalyst for other trail systems, including South Canyon and also Oilo Flats, which are multi-use. So I just don't want anyone to get the feeling that this is because we dislike equestrian users. We don't dislike them. One of my favorite people in the world, my mom, is an equestrian rider, and she and I have had many discussions. I know I've mentioned this before, but it doesn't come from a place of dislike at all. We are so happy to see them on the trails. We're trying to educate our user group. It comes from a place of safety and enjoyment. I just returned from a trip down under where I was able to experience some bike-only trails, and it was a completely different experience than one where you're on a multi-user group. You can fly down the trails without feeling, they're actually directional too, which is a whole other issue we'll talk about, but it was an amazing experience. So as a mountain biker, again, it's not from a place of dislike that we want to see oftentimes these trails separated into a single use versus a multi-use, so equestrians and non-equestrians. It's just a whole different experience as a mountain biker. And as we move forward with our city's plan for inviting tourism, inviting a community that's healthy and happy and enjoys trails close to home, I think it's important to highlight the fact that a bike and hike and run only trail system is a completely different experience that we are excited about, but not because we dislike the other user groups. It's just a very different experience. So that's all I wanted to highlight, and just reiterate that we do not dislike any other user group. We are happy to share those trail systems outside of the Royal Gorge Park with them and do an even better job of accommodating those different uses.
Thank you. And also,
Ashley, I'm sorry.
go ahead, Rex.
Could you kind of, in Fremont County, how many areas are open to horses only?
I believe
do you-
6.
Yeah.
Booger Red,
Booger Red.
Seep Springs, past in the ecology park. Basically, once you get to the creek, that also is open to equestrians and not open to bicycles. Fremont, no, what's it called? Newland Creek.
Newland Creek.
Is also
Yes.
available to horses and not bikes. And these are great opportunities. I want to reiterate too that these are other opportunities. So these different places, including Red Canyon, FAR has no plans to even touch Red Canyon. So that would be a wonderful opportunity. So we talk about, the Fremont Peak Trail being in the works for 10 years. And that's because FAR and other mountain bikers have had this, and hikers and runners have had this idea for that long. And so we, again, came to the appropriate land managers and started that plan. And that would be a wonderful place for a group like the Rocky Mountain Backcountry Horsemen to pick Red Canyon Park, for example, and say, great, we're ready. We have a little bit of funding that we've created. We have a plan. We've mapped out some trails. We've hired someone like Steve to help us cut those trails. That would be an awesome place for those groups to start building some trails that would be really well done and well designed for them specifically, and not our user group and our user groups alone. So I think those would be great opportunities to expand those. Beaver Creek, Seep Springs, all those, I think. I'm not familiar with how much more they could be expanded, but that's certainly something that other user groups could look into. That'd be a great opportunity.
Yeah, and in my younger days, I rode horses quite a bit. In fact, we probably rode to most of the high lakes on the Sangre de Cristo Range over a course of 20 years that I rode horses. But out in Red Canyon, I think that's something I totally agree. I mean, that could be, your catalyst, with the equestrian group is, okay, we've got an opportunity in Red Canyon Park to connect with Seep Springs and connect with the bank to make that a fantastic ride and a great equestrian area.
Yeah, and I think the bank already has horse trailer parking,
Yes.
correct? So that might be
Yeah.
a great.
So the bank also, it says they portions of the bank is not open to bicycles. Deer Haven, Booger Red, Cooper Mountain, Beaver Creek, WSA is not for bicycles, Grape Creek is not open to bicycles, or Newland Creek. So there's
Yep.
it's a common theme that there's some trails that are open to different user groups and some that aren't, and some that are for everybody. And I appreciate your remarks of being diverse for all different types and varieties. It looks like Hillary would like to have an opportunity to. Sure. Well, go ahead and come up to the microphone so we can have it on record.
Thanks. I think I would just like to kind of narrow the conversation to the city of Canyon City. So I know you mentioned Fremont, right? So all those trails that you mentioned are mostly BLM or U.S. Forest Service. So that's different. That's not what we're talking about here. And Newland Creek, we had a horseback rider up there from our group last summer. It is not for horses. It's for hikers only. Like, it's really, really just not, like, it's just, I didn't do it myself, but it sounds like it's just too technical for horses. It's just a lot of work and real narrow in spots. She had to get down, she had to go around, and I know we don't want to leave any trace. So there just was, maybe try not to say that Newland Creek is for horses anymore, because it's really not. Grape Creek, we had a wreck out there on horseback. It's just not one that can be maintained well because of the beavers. And I think it's BLM land. So, like, we've talked that we can't move the beavers because it's their place first, you know. And it's just not, it's an unpredictable area with snow melt and things like that. Really, again, just a hiking or fishing kind of trail now. I don't recommend to any horseback riders that I know to go out there. It's a ride at your own risk kind of trail now because it's just changes so much. We've put a couple hundred man hours into maintaining that trail on horseback, and it's different every time I go out there, and frankly unsafe now.
Do you find an interest or a curiosity in exploring being an activist in creating trails at Red Canyon Park as a partner with the city?
Red Canyon Park already does connect to Seep Springs, right? Tim would probably. There's a road that connects, but it closes sometimes, and there's a fence. I'm not sure. We turned around at a couple different points. I think there's a lot of potential for some horse trails in Canyon. I mean, your council just approved a RV park for horses and horse therapy and stuff. So yeah, let's get some more horse trails here. But I don't know. You brought up like the one-way bike thing. That sounds pretty great because, it sounds less dangerous. But
Okay.
I just want to make sure we're kind of focused on the reason we're here is for Canyon City trails. Yes, there are other trails in Fremont County, but they're BLM
But we do have,
regulated.
so today's conversation is Canyon City Trails, but all of Fremont County is important to us as well. As I thank both of you for being here and for your important comments that we can take into careful consideration. Tim McCain, did you want to have anything to say? Tim, did you want to say anything to City Council today?
It's not related to this.
I know we have a platform for you for off-road vehicles, but.
I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I belong to a local ATV club. They've been around for a long time. I joined them probably 4 or 5 years ago, and kind of am the go-between us and the Bureau of Land Management. Before I joined the ATV club, I've done a lot of volunteer work. Fix trails, put signs in, a bunch of different things. And so understand, what you're saying tonight is every user group, there's always somebody that's going to mess something up for somebody. It happens in the motorized. But in Seep Springs, we just so you know, there's going to be they're in a process now of adding 3 miles of 50-inch trails in Seep Springs. And that's all funded through the OHV grant fund, grant money. So actually, there's a dozer out there right now just waiting for better weather to get started. But yeah, so there's 3 miles going to be added out there. But I also noticed some things in Red Canyon Park that there's a lot of user-created camp spots out there, and it's going to be And just like BLM land and other places, it's gonna get out of control if something's not done right away. I noticed, you know, there's signage out there for camping and designated camp spots, but there isn't any designated camp spots out there, nothing that's numbered or designed for camping. So what people are doing is they're just going out there and camping anywhere. You know, there's a bunch of new roads that are being built out there. They're going off the main road and they're causing damage. I've got some pictures in my phone that I was out there a few weeks ago and I noticed that. So I just thought I'd bring it to somebody's attention.
But we're well
That,
aware of that, what's happening out there.
There's a bunch of, well, what they would call user-created campsites and different things happening, so,
And we do have plans to address that by
yeah,
closing
there's
those
signs,
roads
you know, camp in designated sites only, but there's no designated sites.
Well,
That, you know, there's some campfire rings and that here and there, but seems like they're just making their own homemade campsites,
They are.
you know, so.
All right, thank you for bringing that to our attention. I'd be curious to hear what some of your solutions are to address that.
Well, we've had an influx this year and last year of homeless. That's what is happening out there, the homeless camps. And we try to remove them. You know, there's a ordinance that you're allowed to camp in Red Canyon Park or any of our mountain parks for 72 hours, then you have to move on. It's a 3-day limit. So we've worked with the PD extensively in the sheriff's office to have these camps removed, but once one is removed, another one comes in. So, and like you say, there's actually 3 designated campsites. They might not be numbered, but there's 3 areas for people to camp, and they are moving off of the road and finding their own road and trying to hide in, you know, into the forest a little bit so they're not seen. So that is happening. There's one road in particular that as soon as the weather clears up, we'll be up there blocking that with rocks and trying to keep people out of those areas. So we're well aware of the problem up there, and it's basically, you know, people will stay until they're forced to leave. We can't issue a citation. We have no power to do that, but we can give them a slip of paper that says you've exceeded your 72 hours at this campground and you need to leave. So normally what happens, they stay until we call the police to go remove them. And so that's happening on BLM. It's happening everywhere.
And as I think that, you know, that's an aspect that council has been working on, is the law enforcement side of it. That's why we were considering the park ranger program, is so that we could have more frequent visitations by someone who did have the authority to issue citations out there. And so that's been on our radar screen.
And I think that's a good segue. You know, we have Ken Zabruski, who has rejoined the Canyon City Police Department. He's maintained his post certification, and he will be functioning on special assignment as a park ranger. We have several new hires in the police department as well. As soon as they get through FTO, we'll be adding a second special assignment as a park ranger to help address some of these issues as well.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. And thank you, Tim. Did you have any other comments before we move on?
There's just, I think what needs to be done out there is maybe some clarification on what vehicles are allowed on the roads. There's since Red Canyon Park butts right up against Seep Springs, there's a lot of, I think there's OHVs traveling from Seep Springs into Red Canyon Park. I know I'm just cutting my own throat here because I'd love to ride through Red Canyon Park on mine, but there was a sign that's on the south end where you come out of Seep Springs into Red Canyon Park, and it says no vehicles off established roads. And I've got a picture of it here, and there's no, it says no motorcycles, no cars, no, what does that mean? Does that mean that ATVs are allowed on the road? Because that's an established road, so it's kind of confusing.
Yeah,
And
I can answer that question. Only licensed vehicles are allowed on the roads in Red Canyon to carry a license plate.
yeah, so, it just, the sign just says no vehicles off established roads, so, and I think, you know, it does say there's no off-highway vehicles or ATVs allowed in the park on the north side, but, you know, folks coming in from the south wouldn't know that, I guess.
We've had signs
know.
on the south, they've shot them to smithereens.
Yeah, I've got pictures of them. Some of them are faded pretty bad, some of them full of bullet holes but you know, if the signs could be changed to no unlicensed vehicles instead of no vehicles off established roads, you know, I think it'd be a little clearer for people with off-highway vehicles coming in, you know, because I follow a few social media groups that do off-highway vehicles, and a lot of them will say, or I'll see pictures of Red Canyon Park, and they're riding into the park from Seep Springs, you know, and I tell them, I says, it's off limits. Well, we didn't see a sign, you know, even though, you know, there is a sign on the south side, but it does say no vehicles off established roads. Well, we're staying on the road, we're not going off-road, you know what I mean? So to me, it's kind of confusing, you know, so if it would say no unlicensed vehicles or something like that, that would make better sense.
So as someone who has maybe been reminded a few times that ignorance of the law is no excuse, your point is well taken, that there may be something that we need to look at in terms of signage out there. Understand the issue with vandalism, but I know that they're in the national parks, when when there's no vehicle access, they actually have that road posted, you know, and so that I'm not sure. I mean, I've not been out there myself, so I don't really know what I'm talking about. But what I am asking is that we look at that issue and see if there's some signage, perhaps, that we can that will make things clear to everyone what is allowed and what is not.
Certainly, yeah, we can obviously do that, not a problem.
Yeah, you know, a sign that just says no off-highway vehicles past this point, or something, you know, just one sign or something, you know.
Thank you.
Unlicensed, so, okay.
Rex, did you have any other director updates for us?
I don't believe so. I did want to say, since January 1st, when the police department started doing the locking and unlocking of the restrooms, we've seen vandalism and homelessness decrease quite a bit, so I think that was a big boon for us. We still have our issues and problems occasionally, but they seem to be on the decline now. So that's been great news for us.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions, and was how that was going for you.
Mhm.
Any
Very
other
well.
questions from council for Rex?
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely a good job. We appreciate all your hard work.
And thank you all for being here, especially the representatives of the three different groups. We do appreciate hearing from you, and we do, like Ashley says, want to work together cooperatively to come to whatever common solutions we can get to.
And my only final thing is, Rex, I think it'd be awesome if you put the video you worked so hard on, you need to put it on the website.
Sure.
Yeah, so anyway, there we
We'll
go.
do that.
So thank you all for your time and for all your work in helping to make Canyon City a great place for quality of life. And this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.